I've been into Peru 7 times, and when I go into Peru, I fly into Lima, which is their big city in Peru, and then from there, I get on a plane that has been retired from the United States fleet, and that's what you ride in. Something that is not fit to be flown here in the United States, you're on that, like duct tape holding together things. When you take off on the runway, you see other planes rusting out in the grass, because that's just where they put them when they don't work anymore. They just park them there. It's freaky, okay? And so we take off on these planes that are all just rattling and everything. You fly over the mountains, and then you go into the Amazon jungle, which is just a cool experience. I remember the first time I went down there, it was like I remember this from world history in school, seeing pictures of the Amazon river, and it was so cool to be there. And then you realize, oh man, I'm here for like 3 weeks. Okay, and I only know 3 Spanish words, okay? And we are doing a trip in a couple weeks to Puerto Rico, and they speak Spanish there, and I still only know 3 words, but it's worked out 7 times in the Amazon jungle, so I feel pretty good. But I know papa fritas, that's fries, chili. They just knew chili. I don't think there is a Spanish word for chili, so chili. And then the other is huevos. And when I wanted to change up my eggs, I would just do this for stirring, and they would just call me a gringo because it's like that dude is communicating with 2 words. And that's how I survived in the Amazon jungle. I would try to venture a little bit, but I watched some of my teammates. They would venture off the menu of what they knew, and then they would end up sick because the thing about in the jungle is that they wash all their fruits and stuff in the Amazon River, which they're used to it. All those things are normal for them. But when you, as a gringo, roll in from the United States and you think you're going to do that, you get sick, and it is not pretty. Okay, fluids are exiting every area of your body that it can. Okay, and so you don't want that, especially when you're in a foreign land. When you are out in the middle of the jungle, if you need to get any medical attention, it's shady. Okay, it just is. Just take my word for it. When we've gone into what they call hospitals, that's not what we call hospitals. I'm not sure what they like. Like I was baffled when they talk about like they got mosquito problems, people coming in with sicknesses from mosquitoes, and yet you're in a hospital with no window, like no glass. It's just open. I'm like, shouldn't we do something like screens? And so like our team would try to figure out some of those things. But 3 weeks in the jungle, a lot of fun, a lot of cool stories, but you start to crave a lot of things. And so when we got back to Lima, the big city, they had a McDonald's. And we get on a bus. We had a 12-hour wait period till our plane flew out of there. And we got on a bus, and we asked to go to McDonald's. And this was my first trip there, and it was like, McDonald's sounds so good. Oh my gosh, that's just anything that's close to home food and not chili or eggs or fries. It's just come on, bring on a Whopper, or no, that's Burger King, sorry. A Big Mac, bring on a Big Mac, bring on something like the chicken nuggets. And so we roll in there, and I'm starting to look at the menu, and you're starting to translate how much money you're actually spending on this. And just for a Big Mac, I spent $15. Like, what are they here? They're like $1.99, right? Is that like something like around, what are they? $5? $5 tells you how long I've been there. Back in my day, they were $1.99. No. They're $15 just for the burger, and then you put in the fries. I ended up spending, because I ended up getting the fries. I got a milkshake, and then I just loaded up. It was like a $30-some deal in American money, and I was like, I can't believe I just put that much money at McDonald's. Like, this is ridiculous. This is crazy, but it was worth it in my opinion. If I was here in the United States and today we were to go to McDonald's, I'd be like, 99 cents for a cheeseburger? That's a ripoff. I know what's in that burger. That is a joke. And here's what I learned really quick in all of that the value of something is what somebody's worth or going to pay. The value of something is what somebody's going to pay, wants to pay. Like this bottle of water. How much does this bottle of water cost? Joey, what do you think? What do you think? A bottle of water? 99 cents. Would you pay 99 cents for this water? Kirkland water. Is it worth 99 cents to you? There's no, I've never even opened it. What, it's not? Why? Because you can get water from the water. Now, let's say you're 3 days in the desert. But now I'm going to charge you $200. Would you pay it? No, 3 days in the desert, my friend, no water. Paying $200? Yeah, okay. See, the value just went up because he found more value in the circumstances. Okay, I'm willing to pay $200. So now this is a $200 bottle of water. If you just move it to the right area, the bottle of water goes up. It's the value of things is what people are willing to pay. Now, I'm going to, in case you tune out, and you're like, okay, what's the point of today? You're talking about the value of football teams, the value of McDonald's, and the value of water. Here is the deal. If you're brand new to church, Jesus, all that stuff, you have got to understand this. Every one of us, every child that was in here, everyone that is driving in the Twin Cities, they are valuable. And we are all of the same value. Your net worth does not determine your value. And here's how I know that every one of us are valuable is because of a man named Jesus died on a cross for us. He paid for us with his life. That means we are valuable. That means we're worth something because someone paid the ultimate sacrifice for us. That means your children are valuable. Sometimes I forget that with my children. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with you? That's just only like once every hour. But we forget, that when people irritate us that their value goes down. But with Jesus, the value for us, we are valuable. We don't walk most of the time through life as we are valuable people. We think very low of ourselves. Oh, I don't have these talents. I don't have these resources. I am lacking something. But understand this, those things do not determine your value. Your value is determined by a man giving his life for you. That means you are valuable. That means your children are valuable. When you think you are not worthy of something or worth something, that's the enemy lying to you. Or yourself lying to yourself. Jesus paints this picture. He says the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. You are the thief. Most of the time, we are our own thief. We rob ourselves of our future self, of our dreams and our aspirations because we say we can't do that. If you have children, you never taught your child to not believe in themselves. It's just inherent. It's a natural thing for us to doubt ourselves because if we doubt ourselves, then, hey, I didn't amount to anything because I knew I couldn't anyways. Those are lies that we sell ourselves, and the enemy tricks us, and then therefore we miss out on what God's plan is for our lives, that you are of value because what someone paid for you. Now, if you're sitting there brand new to this, okay, but I don't know if I believe Jesus died on a cross and rose again. Here, this is the easiest way I can sum this up, is that when we read through the Bible, the gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, those are 4 books in the Bible wrote by those men or dictated to somebody and they wrote it down, word for word, the accounts that they saw with their own eyes of what happened. They did not make it up. They wrote it the way it was. Like, think about it. If you're going to write a story about your hero, one of your heroes, if you were going to be an author one day and you're going to tell a story of this hero, you are going to write the story in a way that the hero is perfect in every way. But when you read through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, one of their heroes in there is Peter. And Peter is an idiot. Why do we say that? Because we read through Peter's shortcomings. We don't read that Peter just got it all right all the time. We read how Peter he stuck his foot in his mouth a lot of times. At one point, Jesus says, you're going to be the rock that we're going to build the church on, Peter, because you're the man right now. And then the next couple paragraphs later, Jesus goes, you're Satan, get behind me because you're telling me to not do this. Peter, by all accounts, would not be the person you'd write in as the hero part of the story if you're trying to make this where people just buy into it. But because it's true events and true people, they wrote it as it was. Because see, when Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John sat down and dictated or wrote their books, Peter was dead. They didn't have to write it in a way that needed to be fabricated in a way to make, okay, we got to make sure people know that Peter was a good man. No, they wrote it in a way that says this is truth. And then they interviewed people where Jesus died on a cross, was put in a tomb, and rose 3 days later. I believe your stories when you share your eyewitness accounts throughout the week. So why would I not believe this? Why do we all of a sudden somehow in our mind, in our culture, when it comes to the authors of the Bible, we have this section go in our mind goes, I don't know if that's all true. I don't know about those stories. Those seem kind of made up. But when we come to read other stories of world history, we just believe it. Oh, I can believe that. Could it be because the enemy wants to blind us from the truth? Because when we understand the truth that we are of value, we are of worth, that we might actually change our lives and change those people's lives around us and impact the world in the way we were designed to impact. See, when we function inside that we are of value, we behave differently. When I'm confident what I'm about to do, man, I got no problems risking things. When I'm not confident in what I'm going to do, what do? I step back. I kind of shrink back. If it was a spelling bee for, let's say today, like everybody's like, okay, we're going to do a spelling bee today, and Scott, you're number one. You know what? I would shrink back so fast, be like, oh my gosh, my hands would getting all sweaty. I'm like, I'm not a spelling bee kind of champion, and I just wouldn't step into it. But if you say, today we're all going to run a 5K today, oh, I'm confident in my running, so I'm going to step into that differently because I'm like, oh, I got this. We determine our value by what we do and what we have done. Where Jesus steps in and says, no, I value you because of who you are. You are a child of God. So you playing it small doesn't serve anyone. You shrinking back and not going after the dreams and the aspirations in your life serve no one. We watch these athletic events and go, oh, I wish I could be that. I wish I'm the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Here's the deal. You can be the greatest of all time where you are. You don't need a platform. You don't need a stage. You need to understand that you are of value. The value of something is determined by what someone is willing to pay. 1 John is a book wrote by John, the same John that wrote the book of John in the gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. He came along after he wrote those. He has 1st and 2nd John, and they're later on in the New Testament of the Bible. And 1 John, when you read 1 John, it's a little sporadic. John writes in those books oh, I don't want to forget this part. And so he writes a couple sentences about that, and he's like, oh, I got to put that in there too. And so it doesn't all flow together like a big story. It's more like he's like on he knows, I'm getting old here. I could be dying at any point here, so I better get this information so I can make sure that other people know what I know and what I've experienced. John is the man that when Jesus was on the cross, he looks at John and says, John, will you take care of my mother Mary? And John then goes and spends the remainder of Mary's life with her. And so you know that Mary's giving him information about Jesus' birth and what Jesus was like as a kid and her perspective. And so here's John trying to jot down these things that he's experienced, he's taken in his life. And he writes this. This is how we know what love is. So he's as we're rolling into Valentine's Day, and man, you can already tell that we're there. It's like February 1st, all of a sudden, two things I heard about was the groundhog, because it was the day before Groundhog Day. If you didn't know, the groundhog saw his shadow, which I think it means less winter, right? No, it's 6 less weeks of, I don't know. I'm always confused. But he saw a shadow. So whatever that means, something. Yeah. And then the other is all of a sudden I start hearing about jewelry and all of these chocolates and flowers. I'm like, none of these commercials are actually for a guy. I'm starting to realize that Valentine's Day is just for women, and it's meant to purchase things for women, because you don't hear buy a tractor for your man or buy a bow and arrow for your fishing supply. You don't hear any of that. It's about jewelry, chocolates, and flowers. Which 3 of those things, I don't think guys really, I don't mind flowers, but it's not on my top of my list. Jewelry, it's not on my list at all. It just gets in the way. And then chocolate is not even, I don't like chocolate at all. It's just chocolate is nowhere close to any. So Valentine's Day is a women's day. And so just, if you didn't know that, there you go. You learned something today. The cost of the Vikings in Valentine's Day swings to women. But in light of Valentine's Day, this is how we know what love is. John's going to give us the definition, and it's so good. He goes on and says, Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. And we ought to lay our lives down for our brothers and sisters. Not meaning our blood brothers and sisters, but he's talking about the person to the left of you, in front of you, behind you, all the way around you. We should put their needs above our needs. Whoa, that's a rub. Wait a second. I should make sure that they have food before. That's a rub, because it's like, but what if and Jesus is like, well, hold on. I got you covered. I got you covered. And you'll hear about that here in a little bit. And so then John goes on, if any one of you has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with action and in truth. Sounds a lot like see a need, meet a need. We talk about that a bunch here. See a need, meet a need. It's that's where it comes from, is where John says this is what love is, that Jesus knew we were valuable, so he gave his life for us because he loved us. Like he gave his life. Like, I think we read that as it's like in a land far away or a galaxy far, far away. It's so mystical, and how is that even real? Someone gave their life for you and you never met them. That should change our lives. And here's what I want you to understand about Jesus. Jesus is not coming to take something from you. It's very opposite. If you've heard something different of that, then you're like, wait, I thought Jesus wanted to control. And Jesus says, I've come to give life and life abundantly. He wants to give you stuff. Not material. We immediately go, yeah, money or cars. No, it's life. When you think about it, if you got stranded somewhere, I'll give you this. Like when I go camping or out in the middle of the woods, I love being out in the middle of the woods or in the middle of a lake, and I don't have much with me because I'm not lost in the material stuff. It's just like, man, I'm at peace. We've got people around me that I love. There's something about not having to worry about the junk in my life. And so the stuff that we think in Western culture, when Jesus says, I'm going to give you life, we think material stuff. Jesus is like, no. See, I want, the stuff in life happens to do with the happiness in you. And like, wow, stuff makes me happy. And Jesus is like, well, you got that wrong. Because if stuff makes us happy, what that is, that's pleasure. Like I love running, I love riding my electric devices, the one-wheeler boosted boards, and it's a pleasure for me, which makes me feel happy for a short amount of time. But when it's negative 40-some degrees outside and you can't ride outside with battery-operated things because they only last for like 5 seconds, it's like, I'm not so happy about those things. The pleasure isn't there. When I'm riding it, there's pleasure, but when there's not, right? See, pleasure, we get tricked into think that the things that create pleasure in our lives ultimately give us happiness. It does for a short amount of time while you're doing it, but if we seek pleasure to get happy, we're going to continue to do unwise things. Don't pursue pleasure for happiness. The payoff isn't long. It's not long enough. Happiness comes when we understand that we are valued, that there is value to us. That's where happiness comes from. You know, and I understand that we are valuable because of someone giving their life. Now, here's the thing that really rubbed people with Jesus when he came on the scene, was that Jesus came and said, okay, you have this value system of where people rank. You have slaves that are down here. You have this type of person from a different culture down here. And you have all these classifications, much like we still do today. Oh, if somebody has a different opinion than me, I can't hang out with them. They're below me. Those opinions I don't agree with, so I just stiff arm them. We create this classification. And here Jesus comes on the scene and says, every soul is equal. Every soul has the same value. Well, that rubbed the Jewish people wrong, because the Jewish people in those days were like, no, we're God's chosen people. God said that himself, we're chosen. And Jesus comes and no, this is an all skate. I'm dying for everyone. I'm going to die for the people that have wronged you, and those that will wrong you in the future. I still want to be in a relationship with them. See, one of those things in my mind that I always, when I watch the nightly news and I see what horrible things are happening to people in the world, like that, the unthinkable things that I have seen, I struggle, and this is me being very transparent, I struggle at times to go, Jesus, you died for them too? Because all I want to do is punch them, or worse. They deserve something greater than what they did to someone else. And Jesus is like, I died on the cross for them too. That's Jesus reminding me, I value everyone. Everyone has worth, has value. You heard Kirk talk about in his story where he's talking about where David was going to be anointed king. And before I heard that, I had it in my story, 1 Samuel chapter 16. And here's the quick story in case you missed it. David was the second king of the Israelite people. The first one was King Saul. King Saul did some bad stuff, so God was like, I'm done with him. Talked to another guy named Samuel and said, hey, I need you to go to Jesse's house and anoint one of his sons the next king. So go there. So Samuel goes into Jesse's house and says, hey, get all your boys here. I'm going to anoint one of them. Okay, so the dad goes and gets the oldest and says, this is my oldest. This is probably who you're going to anoint because that's just how it worked in their culture. The oldest one got the inheritance and then it kind of got, sifted through the rest. So here's nope. God says it's not him. Goes through 7 of the kids. 7 of the boys. And Samuel's like, none of these are it. Are you sure this is all? And the dad goes, oh, yeah. We've got like the runt of the litter, the youngest. He's like 13 years old. He's out doing shepherd things with the sheep. We can go get him if you want to wait. But I really think you should take a look at number 1. Number 1, he's the number 1 boy. And he's like, no, I will wait here. And in this meantime, waiting for David to come into the house, Samuel sits down and God begins to tap Samuel on the shoulder, that nudge, like we talk about here, where God begins to speak to him and just say, hey, I got something to teach you here, Samuel. And so in 1 Samuel chapter 17, 16, verse 7, the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or the height of his stature because I have rejected him. Talking about the older brothers. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. I wish I could see my own heart. I wish I could see the heart of my children. Because, man, that's what God sees. He doesn't see, oh, my kid's got Nike shoes on, or their hair is short or long, or that person has tattoos or no tattoos. God doesn't look at any of that. God looks at the heart. I get so frustrated at myself when I walk through a mall and I look at somebody and I think something that is like, that's not even how God would look at them. Why do I think that? Based on what they're driving or wearing or not wearing and all these thoughts in my mind, I constantly am asking Jesus to change the thoughts in my mind because I don't like looking at people any other way than the way Jesus sees people, of value, of worth. But human nature is the opposite, and I fall victim all the time to my thoughts, thinking the wrong thing of people all the time, and I constantly have to ask forgiveness of it because I just don't get it right all the time. And Jesus, or God, comes into the scene here and just reminds us, hey, I look at the heart. Now, you want to know what your heart looks like? Here, Jesus later on, like Jesus comes in the scene many, many years later, like decades later, Jesus comes on the scene and he goes, okay, when he's talking to the Jewish people, they're going to already know the story of David and knows like, hey, remember when I taught Samuel to look at the heart? Well, here's how you get to know the condition of someone's heart. So Matthew quickly, probably, I don't know how he wrote down. I don't know if he was on stone tablets. Jesus, slow down, man. I can't get this in fast enough trying to chisel in some words. But Jesus does something so profound in Matthew chapter 12, verse 34. It's profound in one state, and it's super scary on the other. Matthew records Jesus saying, he goes, you brood of vipers. Jesus, in the way he just likes to address people, you brood of vipers, turned my head right away. I'm like, yes. How can you, who are evil, say anything good? For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Jesus dropped, he just drops the mic at that point. The mouth speaks what the heart's full of. So you know what? When I listen to the way my kids speak to each other, and it breaks my heart because I'm like, that's in their heart. How do I know that? Because Jesus is giving us a window into how we are as human beings. We want to know what the condition of our heart is. Listen to the words that come out of your mouth, the way you speak of a certain kind of person. A certain way a person looks, how do you speak of them? Or a certain condition someone has, and you listen to how you speak. That gives you an indication of your heart is. That should scare you. And we're so good at justifying those things that we say because I know what I'm about to say. You shouldn't talk. I wouldn't want my kids to talk about somebody like that, but I'm just letting you know about this person. It's coming from your heart. The words that come out of our mouth are from our heart. Did you know this, that the word, I sometimes tend to be sarcastic a little bit at times. I can be sarcastic at times. Just ask Rachel. Rachel's like, are you being sarcastic right now? Because, some people just don't catch sarcasm and stuff. Did you know, I read this the other day, that the Greek definition of sarcasm is ripping flesh from bones. What? Does that sound anything relatively close to what I want to do to people? So when we're being sarcastic in the joking sense that, if they get it, it'll hurt. If they don't get it, other people will just laugh kind of deal. It's a version of ripping skin from the bone. So maybe as a parent, you'll start paying attention to the way your kids speak. They'll give you an indication of their heart and give you an indication of what you need to parent through. I know it has this week for me as I've heard my kids speak. It's given me an indication. I just started praying these words, and maybe this is the conversation that you can have with Jesus over the next week. Jesus, may I hear the words that are coming out of my mouth. May I be aware of what I'm maybe tweeting or putting on Instagram. May I be aware of what I'm writing. Oh, I get it. We can be very irritated at times with people. Man, I'm the king of being irritated behind the wheel of a car. I just think everybody just needs to drive like I drive, which isn't the right way of driving. I've learned my driving through living in Chicago, in Miami. I am a dangerous driver. I think that, if everyone drove like me, we'd be fine. We'd probably have a lot more accidents, probably, to be honest with you. But I get behind the wheel and I'm like, oh my gosh, stop pumping the brakes. Or last Saturday, there were tons of cars in the ditch because we got an inch of snow and it was super icy and stuff. And people were just gawking. They just slow down and they watch and then they swerve. And I'm driving with the trailer trying to just get here and not swerve myself. And I'm just like, just keep your eyes on the road, people. Eyes on the road. Let's go forward. Let's stop pumping the brakes. This is how people get. I'm yelling through the windshield, no one in my car. And it's like, I have got a lot of work to do. Because I'm shouting at these people. I'm irritated. But what is it revealing? The heart of me. See, I love what David wrote in the Psalms. Psalms is kind of in the middle. If you get an old school Bible, because for digital, you don't really have these anymore. But if you got an old school Bible and you flip it open, it's going to fall somewhere in the middle is about Psalms. And Psalms is really an inside perspective of some of the kings of the Israelites and some different people that were like their journal entries. Their perspective of their relationship with God or how they felt God was handling it. And it's so amazing to read the Psalms because sometimes I read it and I'm like, I can relate to that. I am frustrated with God because he's not answering this prayer. I do feel alone at times. And so you can read the Psalms and go, that's exactly how I feel right now. And I love what David writes in his journal, and we've put it all together in a book called the Psalms, of Psalms 139. These are David's words, who was just anointed the king. These words could have been wrote. No one really knows when he actually wrote it in his life. But man, I would lean towards, this is my opinion, okay? Just make sure. This is my opinion so you know it. This sounds like something you could write after God just anointed you to do something pretty profound. That you just found out that God found worth in you. That you are valued because someone died for you. And so here's David writes this. For you created my inmost beings. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. It was one of those moments in David's life. He was doing his ordinary shepherd stuff, and all of a sudden, God said, I'm going to show up and show off in your life. And David, if you have the eyes to see it, you're going to be blown away. And I'm pretty sure, based on what we just read there, this is David going, I just saw God show up and show off in my life. Wow, I'm blown away. Wow, I'm not just a shepherd boy. I'm not the youngest, no good boy, just forgotten about. God has a big plan for me. And this is true of every one of you in this room and everyone else in this world God has plans for. This is an in inside information on how God sees us. That this isn't just for David, that he created you and he knows your inmost being. He knit you together in your mother's womb. That should make you praise God even more because you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are a workman piece of God, wonderfully made. That should make you roll your shoulders back and go, I got this thing called life. When you feel anxious or worried or overwhelmed, you are a child of God and you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Your value is increasing today because you realize now, oh man, someone paid the ultimate price for my life. Now, maybe you have seen this verse I'm about to read, but I threw this in there because this is one of those verses a lot of people run to when they want this inspiration of, man, God knows every footstep and these plans. And they read from Jeremiah chapter 29, which is in the Old Testament. The Old Testament is the Jewish scriptures. And so Jeremiah 29, verse 11, if you might have seen these in graduation cards. Like people love this at graduation time because it says this. This is God talking. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare, not evil, to give you a future and a hope. That's like, yes, I want to adopt that to my life, but that's not for us. That's not for us today, because if you continue to read on the rest of that, it goes and says in 80 years. In 80 years, I have plans to do something pretty big in your life, but understand you're going to go through a lot of tragic stuff, and to get there in 80 years, I'm going to show up and show off. And it's really, in Jeremiah is writing for that culture, that day, that group of people saying, listen, God has a plan for us. It seems really low right now, but in 80 years, he's going to do something pretty profound. So, if you're okay with giving a graduate this summer, hey, here you go. God knows the plans for he has you in 80 years. 80 years, so you're going to be 90 some years old, maybe 100 when this all comes through. Good luck. This is to reveal to us God's character. The Jewish scriptures, the Old Testament, is to inspire us that we are following a God that does great things and has great plans for us. But this phrase here is not for us to go, this is exactly, God is saying this to me. It's to inspire you that this is the kind of God we serve. And I put that in there so that as you realize, man, I am of worth, I am of value, that we can't just grab verses that are not for us. This was for the Israelites of that day. But Jesus does say this. This is for us. These are Jesus' words to you and me as we wrap this up in Matthew chapter 10. They're standing out. Who are they? The disciples and Jesus are standing outside the temple. And in that day and age, the temple had this place where they would trade stuff and sell stuff. Because maybe you made a long trip to the temple, because in those days in Jewish culture, where to be a real Jewish person, you had to visit the temple once a year and do some sacrifice stuff. And people would travel hundreds of miles on donkeys or foot and get there and not have anything to do with sacrifice with. So the people that were in charge of the temple saw an opportunity to make some extra money. And so they started selling some doves for sacrifices and sparrows. And they began to have a place where you could trade in your currency, because they would only accept a certain kind of coin. And so, well, here, you come over here and we'll trade your money. But today the exchange rate is like 10 times what it was yesterday. And that's what made the temple such a dodgy thing. If you ever read through the New Testament where Jesus gets angry about what's happening in the temple, is because these people are leveraging what is set up for God to make money. They're coming over here going, we're going to exchange rate gone up today because we need to eat a little bit more better food. So they would exchange this and they would sell these doves and these animals for sacrifice. And so they're standing out in front of all that happening. And he's talking to his disciples, and he says, listen, let me pause here in a story. You see those sparrows over there, those caged birds over there? It's the same sparrows we got around here. He goes, you know what? People are buying them for a penny. 1 cent buying those things. So he's communicating they're not worth very much. Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside of your Father's care. So he's making a point to them. The lowest thing in the world, it seems, is a sparrow. It's 1 cent. But God knows when one hits the ground, When it freezes to death, and there might have been a few this past week here that are the rock solid. They're thrown out today. Maybe their little hearts will come back beating. Cool fact, when we lived in Florida, they have these lizard things. I forget what they're called. Iguanas. People would let them go, like they're not native there, but people would let them go and they would grow to be ginormous. And then when it got cold, like 32 once in a while, they would freeze to their trees. And like I'm in my morning run and you just see these iguanas just like holding on, just frozen, like stiff. Sometimes when they fall out of the tree still frozen, their hands are like they were holding onto a stick. They're just on the ground. You know what happens by lunchtime? They awake and they start moving around again. Like you're like, they're dead, they're gone, they're no more. Nope. They're just little hearts were just in there, stop for a moment. And then all of a sudden they warm up and their heart goes, dun, 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 dun. Oh, okay, everything's good. And they just go off. It's the weirdest thing. It's creepy. Maybe that's what's happening with the sparrows today. I don't know. Jesus is trying to set up the point for you here. He goes, not one of them will fall to the ground outside of the Father's care. And even the very heads of your head, even the very hairs of your heads are numbered. You're like, okay, he just made a shift there. What is he trying to say? He's trying to point out this point that we are worth a lot, that God even knows when you lose a hair. That's how valuable you are. Some of you are like, wow, he's been doing some subtraction. I'd like an addition here. Some of you are like, you looked at the shower today and you're like, whoa, I got to make a wig out of that. I don't know. You're just you. Here's the deal. God knows when we lose a hair, that's how valuable we are to him. That should excite you. That should give you encouragement. That should make you understand that you are a big deal. May we begin to do life like we're a big deal. Not because of our talents and money and net worth or what we drive. It's because we are sons and daughters of God. And if you get that today, that's all it's about today, is that you are valuable. And may we value other people how God values us. I really hope Jesus said something to you. Would you close your eyes for a second?